All right, gang, and welcome back to Procreate. Now, what if I were to tell you that 1 hour from now, you'd be able to create this piece of digital art with just what you know right now? You'd probably say that's a lot of skill there and that's a lot of time. Not really. We're going to walk you through how to do this exact thing using all of the tools and the techniques that you've learned in the class so far. So let's go ahead and get into it. The very first thing you're going to want to do is we're going to go ahead now and we're going to create a new workspace and we're going to make it the size of our screen. All right, so now with this, we're going to go ahead and add 2 layers. Okay, now these are going to be divided into separate lessons, so we're not going to take the whole thing at once. We're going to go ahead, first and foremost, we're going to call this layer 1, and we're going to use the symmetry technique that you learned in an earlier lesson. So to do that, we're going to grab an inking pen. I'm just going to grab my technical pen. I'm going to go about halfway down on the size, and I'm going to draw a line. Now, you remember when you hold the line, it will then lock. And then if you put one finger on the line, it will draw it completely 90 degrees. All right, so this almost gives us our line of symmetry. Now, with the line of symmetry now, let's go ahead and go to layer 2, and let's call this our base rocket. Okay. Oh, not Rocky. Let's go that route. Rocket. There we go. I can spell today. All right, so with that being said, let's grab our painting brushes, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to use the round brush. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start a new palette. So I'm going to go to palette. I'm going to click the button, and you know how to do this. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to click a new palette. There it is, untitled. We're going to make it the default. All right. Now, we're going to want kind of a blue rocket. We don't want it highly saturated. We want something right about in this area. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on that color of blue. Now, in order to make this work, we're going to use some basic shapes. All right, we're going to come in and we're going to start painting this rocket. So I'm going to make the rocket look a little bit like this, right? And yours doesn't have to look like mine. You can make it look any way you want to. And then I'm going to make the fin on the rocket look a little bit like this. And then this fin here on the rocket is going to look a little bit like this. Now again, we're utilizing our sketching concepts and we're keeping everything really loose. Okay, now we're going to go ahead now and we're going to solidify this. So we want to make sure our opacity is all the way up. And we're going to make some hard lines in this rocket. Okay, so we're going down and we're making lines with the rocket. Now remember, if you have problems pulling these lines, take a look at your streamline setting and see if it's where you want it. Now, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go down the symmetry line because I'm looking to make a complete shape. Okay. Now, once I got that, I'm going to flood fill. All right, perfect. Now I come in and I fill in all the little spots and all of that kind of stuff. It's not essential that you do this. You've got it close enough for horseshoes and hand grenades. Now, I'm going to show you how to do a grayscale rendering. This is something that we haven't covered before, and I really like doing my paintings in grayscale before I actually go into the detail phase. So we're going to bring this up. We're going to now create a new layer, and we're going to rename this layer. We're going to call it shading. All right, perfect. Now, you're going to want a different palette for this. You can actually build right on this palette, but I have a palette that I like to use for all my grayscale rendering, and surprisingly, it's called grayscale. So I'm going to go ahead and set that for default, and I'm going to set this layer to multiply. Now, the reason that you do a grayscale rendering is because then you can put any color underneath it, and as long as the layer is set to multiply, you don't have to redo all your shades and tones and all the crazy stuff. So we're going to use a couple of the techniques to set ourselves up here before we end this video. We're now got our shading layer set to multiply. We've got our base rocket shape set. Now, here's what we're going to do. You're going to come to selection. We're going to make sure automatic is selected. And we're going to tap on the blue. You see how it went brown? Now we're going to bring up our selection. Now the trick here now, folks, tap on the gray square there and make this the reference layer. Now what that does, we're actually going to begin working in the shading layer, but by doing this, what it's telling that shading layer is you're going to treat that base rocket layer as the rule. So even if you're shading on the shading layer, it won't go outside the lines of the base rocket. So this is a nice technique in order to create a mask that doesn't allow you to work outside the shape. All right, so we're going to go ahead and cut this first lesson here. What I want you to get to is create your shading layer, set it to multiply. Use your paintbrush to create a base rocket shape, and then make your symmetry layer there. We'll go ahead and name that symmetry line. All right, cool. So if you can get here in this lesson, we're in pretty good shape. All right, folks, get the project to this side, and then we'll see you in the next lesson. Have a good one.